I'm Dave Holmes. I'm the Educational Programming Manager for Candid. I'm at our Cleveland office, it's our Midwest office in Cleveland, Ohio. And I do a lot of what the other educational programming managers do across the country. I teach classes and I visit different locations. I help people learn how to use Foundation Directory. I teach grant writing. I do all that sort of educational related stuff. And I help create some of the curriculum as well. So, and St. Joseph is in kind of my region, though I don't travel nearly as much as I used to since we've got Zoom. But I'm happy to do this today to just give you kind of an overview.
Thank you, Dave. Now, what our patrons are real keen on Candid Foundation Directory Online and grants to individuals. So your insight into the programs are very welcome. And thank you again for taking the time to join us here at St. Joe County Public Library.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Scott. And thank you for having me. I'm just going to go through, if that's all right with you, I'm just going to go through and show Foundation Directory and generally how it's used. Do you want me to take it from a librarian perspective or a public perspective or both? It doesn't matter.
How about both? This is staff and patron.
Okay, well, I'm going to do that, and I'll show Foundation Directory, grants to individuals, and then GuideStar. And I'm going to try and show it the way that you might use it and the way that people coming into the library might want to use it. I don't know too much about St. Joseph County. I don't know if you have a lot of nonprofits or a lot of individuals.
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's good because what I'm going to show you is very useful for different size nonprofits. The grants to individuals is more for scholarships and individuals that are looking to get usually arts funding or school funding. And then GuideStar would be useful for just about anybody who is affiliated with a nonprofit or looking to fund a nonprofit to do research on them. So I'll show those three things. And then if you have any questions, you can ask them after I show each one of these, or you can ask them while I'm doing it. So let me know.
Thank you.
All right. So first thing I'm going to show you is Foundation Directory. Foundation Directory is, and I'm going to go to sharing my screen, and I have them all loaded up here. So hopefully you can see this.
Yes, sir.
This is the screen. This is what it would look like because you are a partner of ours, Candid Community Partner. This is what the screen would look like when you logged in, and I assume that you have this available through your main pages, through your database pages.
Yes.
Okay. So normally when I work with Foundation Directory, it's set up to make it very easy. You can just type it in like a Google search and type in the name of the type of program that you're doing, where it is, and who you're serving. I generally don't do that though, because I like to use this to make it more immediately effective to the people that you are serving. First thing I usually explain is that it's really not of much use unless you are a nonprofit or working with a nonprofit, because the grants that are going to be listed here, and they're coming from foundations, from corporations, and from charities, are almost exclusively for nonprofit organizations, 501c3 nonprofits, or those working with them. So sometimes we do get questions from individuals that are working separately, and that's what the grants to individuals will be for, and I'll show you in a little bit. But the way that I generally show this off to anybody that walks in, I usually do a little bit of a reference interview, and I ask, so what are you looking for? And I'll get an idea of what the program is and where it's located, and what specifically it doesn't necessarily matter where the nonprofit is located. It matters where the people that they're serving are located. So I go in, when I start doing this, I go into advanced search. And advanced search has a lot of different blanks to fill in. But when I use it, I mainly use these three across the top: the subject area, the geographic focus, and the population served. So I start normally with talking to whoever it is that's looking to get funding. And I say, well, what is your program? And they might say, well, it's an after-school program, it's youth development, it has an educational component, it has a athletic component, just as an example. And I can use any of those terms to search for funders that are likely to give for those type of things. If I type in education, for example, it gives me lots and lots of different options. And the ones that are further to the left listed here are the ones that are the broader terms. I generally start with broader terms and move to narrower terms. So education would be one of the terms that I would use, and it would cover all the different types of education as well. So it automatically clicks all the subheadings for that. If they said it was a youth program, a youth development program, I might type in youth and find youth development is a subheading of human services, but I could add that. Those terms, what I'll find now, if I just do the search, is anyone who has funded education and anyone who has funded youth development, both of those. It will match any of them. But if I want it to be very specific for like a educational youth development program, I'll put in match all, and it will match all the terms. This is the number one area that I use, subject area, because it's the description of what the program is doing. The second thing that is very important to do with any search, though, is to narrow it geographically. So I'm going to type in St. Joseph County. I'm not sure if it's going to come up as Saint or ST. Let's see. St. Joseph County, Indiana. So what I usually do, instead of saying a particular city within the county, I will say, show me everybody who has funded within that county. Because most of the times, what you're looking for are funders who don't mind giving to a location and have given to that location before. So St. Joseph County, Indiana is the one that I'm going to be searching in this case. This is enough to do a search matching. It's going to funders who give to youth development education programs in St. Joseph County. If I do that search, I come up with a list. Come up with a lot of different options I can change to modify it, but I come up with 38 grant makers who have given 68 grants to 24 different recipients in St. Joseph County. If I want to know who those grant makers are, I can see them here. If I want to see the specific grants all the way through 2023, I can see that here. Further down, I can see who's received the grants across time. It looks like the University of Notre Dame du Lac is the main recipient. And further down, anytime that St. Joseph County shows up in anyone's tax form, I generally don't get into that. Generally, I stay towards the top here and look at the grant makers. You can see that it says there are 38 grant makers listed, and it lists them not in the order of the most money that they've given or the most likely amount that they're going to give. It's the amount, it's the number of grants that they have given over time. So in the time since we've been collecting information from 2003 to 2023, there have been 9 grants from the Zoki Lucille C. Charitable Trust, 6 from United Way of St. Joseph County, 4 from the Community Foundation of St. Joseph County for both youth development and education. So each of these will tell you what the grants were for and who they went to. So here's grants by the Community Foundation of St. Joseph County going to Christ Child Society and the Fishoff National Chamber Music Association, Boys and Girls Club of St. Joseph County, and the Crossing of Noble Regional. By the way, this is silver and expired and information. I'll talk about that later. That goes with guide stuff. But it tells you what the specific grant was for, when it was given. And if I want to know even more detail about that specific grant, I can click on it and it will open up that one grant to tell me what was this money given for. And it says unrestricted for education and youth services. It was a cash grant. You get a lot of detail on individual grants. So what I usually think of this as is material that I want. Let's go back to where we were actually. Exit out of that and just go back to this list. What I normally want to find out is who has given similar grants to the program that I'm doing, because that's the indication of whether they're likely to give to me. If they've given to somebody like me, they probably will give to me in my location. So I want to know more about Community Foundation of St. Joseph County because I look at the list of their grants and they seem to have given grants to organizations like mine. I can then look at their profile. This is most of the time what you want people to get to is looking at a profile of a funder. Community Foundation in South Bend is listed here with their contact information. All of this information is available on this, what's called the profile. And it tells you when it was last updated. So it was last updated in last May. You can find more about what they've been doing recently by looking at this first tab here, this first bit. They funded 446 grants to 231 organizations in the last 5 years. Most of the money, of course, going to Indiana, most going for human services, education, and generally the grants have been 5 to 10,000 or 10 to 25,000. Gives me a picture of them, so that then as I look further down, I can see, well, what have they specifically given for education and youth development? The average amount is about 12,287. That's the most common anyway. And the gifts here are listed. Each of those grants that they've given are listed here, and you can research them this way. All of this is material that you would gather so that if you are going to apply to them, you can have some background on them. This is your due diligence, your homework that you're doing, so that you are able to refer to them. You can say, when you talk to them, perhaps, I see that you've given a lot of grants for youth development in St. Joseph County, and particularly to the Boys and Girls Club and to the Christ Child Society. You can find out specifically, you can use that as a way of talking to them. This profile, and you can see on the left-hand side, there's a way to move through it pretty quickly, but this profile has a lot of information about this foundation. Has their profile, has their background, their program areas, what they tend to fund within. Similar funders are listed here to this organization, and further down, it gives you current requests for proposals, and they have a request for project grants due on March 1st, 2024. It's coming up. And then their general grant making guidelines. How do you approach them first? And then what should you include if you do apply to them? Also, oftentimes we have listed in here deadlines, which this one does not have a deadline, and any kind of limitations where they say we do not fund a certain thing. In this case, they don't have any limitations listed. But the important thing to do is to look, if you're going to apply, for example, to a special project grant, you would want to read those guidelines and see if you qualify for them. You know, they've given to projects like yours in the past, but that doesn't mean that you're not, for some reason, out of their area of interest, for example. You have more about their financials. If you want to look at all the grants they've given, you can pull up their 990s and 990 PFs. If you want to know about the staff who's working there, you can see the list of their officers and list of their staff members. And oftentimes, if we find them on LinkedIn, we will put a little LinkedIn symbol next to them so you would know. If you wanted to talk to one of them, you could see whether they might be somebody that you're friends with, or somebody that you know is friends with. Further down, there's communication that they've put out. There's their YouTube channel. And at the very bottom, contact information. Obviously, if you were going to reach out to Community Foundation of St. Joseph County, you might take a look at their website, you read this information, and then when you're ready to call, you can talk to Rose Meissner. Now, we always try to tell what the best approach for any foundation is and put it in this initial approach. But my way of teaching this is often find this information and then be prepared to make a phone call to them. Not all these funders will have a phone number, but if they do, I tend to want to call them because I want to get feedback about things. I want to know if they're like, if they have an upcoming deadline that they just haven't posted. I know the board meets in March, but they have a deadline in March. So when should I get stuff in? Is it maybe sometime in December? I can try and figure that out, but it's easier to talk to somebody and know for certain. Always look at their website too, because this is information that we've gathered, but if they have a website, that's additional information that can add to it. By the way, if you're using this in the library, you can print a PDF, download a PDF of this to your flash drive or to your computer. You can email a PDF of this to yourself, and you can print it. I don't know what St. Joseph County's printing restrictions are, but you could print it there, I assume. This is the basic use of Foundation Directory to find potential sources of funding. So I go into the Find Funding, I go to the advanced search, I populate this subject area and this geographic area, and that's usually the way that I work it. There are other ways to do this, because there's these advanced filters and then there's additional filters that you could fill in. For example, you might just want to look up the name of an organization, either a funder or a grant recipient, and see, try to find Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame du Lac in Notre Dame, Indiana. Who has given them grants? Well, they've gotten quite a lot of grants over the course of time. listing where they've gotten grants from, and you can learn more about them. You can learn about them as a grant maker or as a recipient. So this is them as a grant maker. And then you can find University of Notre Dame du Lac as a recipient and see who's given them grants and where those grants have come from. Doesn't necessarily have all of them. And obviously this is not a complete list of everybody who's given grants to Notre Dame, but it tells you about at least one or some of them. And it tells you where they generally get their money and how big the grants have been. So it's good for finding additional information about specifics. Also, if you know somebody's name from the community and you want to see, are they on a foundation board or something like that, you can type in their name and get a match to this. But generally, when I search this, I use subject area and geographic focus. Sometimes I use population served. If I'm doing a program that's very specific to LGBTQ people, for example, and I want to see who's funded LGBTQ programs in St. Joseph County, I can do this kind of search and see who has been giving for, oops, I got to get rid of Notre Dame there. If who has been giving specifically for LGBTQ related issues in St. Joseph County. You can also narrow that down. If you say, well, that's for like a long time, that's for the last 20 years. Who's been doing it in the last 7 years? Say, I can change these year range here and see that search. And you can see there's a little bit fewer and ones that are more recent. You can see who's been giving it. They're not necessarily organizations that are located, grant makers that are located in Notre Dame or Indiana in general, because this is going to find all the funders who have given specifically to your county. And it brings in national funders, it brings in corporate funders. If it's a bank that has regional offices in your area, if it's any company that has a location there that might be given, you find an awful lot, sometimes a surprising amount of funders have given to your county that are way outside of your county. But you find all this information by continuing to do searching. And I try a couple of different things. Sometimes I even do this search where I just want to see who all over the course of the last 7 years has given grants to St. Joseph County. There's a lot. And you will find, in addition to private foundations and community foundations and charities, you'll find federal funders that have given. You'll find donor advised fund managers like Fidelity. Fidelity often shows up near the top because though you can't write and apply to Fidelity, they are managing a foundation and their recommendations from individuals with investments there are giving into St. Joe. And that's going to become important when I talk about GuideStar. But you find out all of the funders who have given in St. Joseph County, and sometimes you're surprised at the number. It's quite outside the number that are located there. There's many other ways to use it if you want to find funding just specifically, like who's funded capital projects in St. Joseph in the last 7 years. You can do that search. Here's 103 grant makers who have given money for capital projects. Find out what those were, find out how much the money was for, and use that as material that you can use to approach potential funders. Does anybody have any questions about this or anything you want to comment on before I move on?
And yeah, Dave, real quick, on the 990s, the most recent is what, 1 year back?
Usually the 990s, because of the way the IRS operates, it usually takes anywhere from 6 months to 18 months to get a 990. So you finish a tax year, the end of 2022, and then the 2022 990 should show up for every organization in the next 6 to 18 months. However, you may have remembered that we had this COVID thing, and there was a little bit of a slowdown on the IRS's website that has just started to be started up again. There was a lot of stuff that didn't get uploaded to their site. So we're very much dependent on what they have done. So we do see a number of 2023 tax forms that are coming in, 990s and 990 PFs. Surprising number actually of 2023, given that It's still 2023.
Right,
But you notice when you open this up that their fiscal year might be slightly different. So this is a 2021 return
sure,
that was published in 2023.
right.
So if you can't find what you're looking for, I can't really make that happen, but I definitely can understand that you may only see like those from the last year, the year before. We get a lot of, or from the year before and the year before that, we get a lot of funders that give information directly to us. So we may have some more information on grants than the 990s even have yet, because they've directly reported to us and we've processed it faster than the IRS.
Thank you.
Any other questions? This is really an easy tool to use and an easy tool to get lost in, because you can narrow things a lot of different ways. My basic advice about searching is always to use the broadest subject terms. And if you just go to this advanced search and click in the box in subject area, it'll show you the major terms that we use to describe different funding and different programs. And then within that, there are the subheadings for all the different kinds. If a person really can't find what they're looking for, you can try a keyword search, but no, as with every keyword search, you're going to find a lot of garbage in with what you search. I really recommend subject area and geographic focus. All right. So I'm going to go to the other database that's similar to this, that is called Grants to Individuals. Grants to Individuals was created because you can find grants to individuals in the foundation directory, but the thing about that is that oftentimes they're buried within larger records and it's difficult to find. And really, for grants to individuals, there's only about 10,000 grants to individuals compared with, and maybe it's a little bit more than that, but right now we have over 240,000 grant makers in the foundation directory with multi-millions of grants given. But grants to individuals is a small slice of that. Mostly scholarships, fellowships, or gifts to individuals for schooling. So we generally encourage people, like if somebody comes in and says, I really want to get a grant to pay off my student loans, I really want to get a grant to start a business, those grants don't really exist. I mean, grants are there to fund individuals doing something charitable related. Legally, that's kind of what it is. So that tends to be arts projects or schooling. There are a very, very few that will give to just needy people. So if needy people come in, the best advice I have to everyone who's looking to get free money is to look to the nonprofits in the area. Look to if you have a 211 service in your region, who is helping people that are in dire straits. That's going to be a better use of your time than going through grants to individuals. But if you're looking for a scholarship, if you're looking for money for school, and if you're looking for maybe art stuff that's going on, maybe there's some specialized giving, you'll find requests for proposals here, and you will also be able to search for a scholarship. So say, it's a similar kind of search fields. In fact, it looks very much the same. You say you want to study arts, for example, and you're looking for individual grants. Let's not make it arts because that's going to give me a little too much. But let's say I am trying to study, I don't know, what am I going to go to school and study?
Do a shelter.
How about what?
Yeah, I was going to say shelter, David. We got like shelter and residential care.
Shelter and residential care. So what is this funding for shelter and residential care?
Setting up a place for people to sleep, to house.
So this is a person looking for a grant. They're not a nonprofit, and they want to get a grant to set up a shelter.
That's right.
They won't get anything.
They won't. Okay.
Because shelter grants are 99.9% of the time going to charities.
Right,
That's
right.
the way the law is for private funders.
Okay.
Now, this might be something that is, I'm not sure what's going to come up when I do shelter and residential care. Maybe this will give me the lie, but let's say shelter and residential care in Indiana. Let's see what comes up when I do the search. Here's one grant maker. Now, this is already, if you put shelter and residential care in the other database, you'll find tons of things.
Yeah, yeah,
Now you found one. What is this?
yeah.
This is
Orphan.
the Ethel Voris Scott Trust Scholarships Awards Orphan Children. You don't see that phrase anymore. Scholarship awards to orphan children from Montgomery County, Indiana.
Uh,
This is your shelter and residential care grants in this database. It's very, if you go into this database as an individual and try to find it, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen.
Sure.
It's a lot easier to go back in and do a search and say, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to look for, I'm going to study, let's just make it a very broad thing. Let's say I'm going to study science and I'm looking for any grants that are going to go to Indiana residents. I usually make it as broad as possible. So instead of the county, I'll go for the state. When I do this search as it is, I find 11 results, which if you did this in the other foundation directory, you'd find about 1,000 or so. And these are all grants that are given in Indiana for science-related individual gifts. A lot of them coming from the Community Foundation of St. Joseph. Improve the quality of life for succeeding generations. They have a grants to individuals program. It's scholarships to individuals residing in St. Joseph County for undergraduate education. And then they have other scholarship funds. Here's details on this specifically related for individuals.
Yeah.
And it says, all the limitations that they don't give for, and then more details. So it's similar to what we just looked at, but you can see how much narrower it is. And you can see, do they give aid to individuals? Well, yes, they do. And it's mainly scholarships and student aid and graduate school and undergraduate. Mostly what I do with people that are using this database is try to encourage the broadest search possible. If I say I want to study the environment and I want to see who's giving grants, I can put in such as like Indiana and United States. The United States is a country. Okay, so you would find anybody who specifically said I give for environmental related things for individuals in Indiana and the United States. And that's about as broad as I can imagine. And here are 128 grant makers, and this is going to be all over the map. This is going to be scholarships. This is going to be something else environmentally. Let's look at Ashoka, which I don't know anything about. They're in Arlington, Virginia. Gives fellowships internationally to individuals who possess the innovation and drive to realize social change in education, youth development, healthcare, environment, human rights access. So this is the kind of thing that they do. Here's their grants to individuals program, and here's the information. It's a similar kind of thing, how to apply to them, when they give the awards, what they don't fund, and contact information. But if I was looking for this and I was looking for some sort of environmental funding, and I was an individual and looking to learn about it in school or to do a project that would be specifically beneficial that they're funding individuals for, I might look here. Is this clear? It's really not a difficult database to exhaust because it doesn't have as many records as the other database that I showed you. And sometimes you'll do a search and you're like, well, I'm just not finding things. And that's when I start to work with an individual that's looking for this and say, well, where else can we look? I often suggest people go to the community foundation in their region to find out specifically about scholarships, because as you saw in the Community Foundation in St. Joseph, they house a lot of scholarships, and that might be a good place to go. I talked to them about the school that they're attending and whether there's scholarships there. Those won't be listed here. And I also suggest that they use Peterson's and all the other scholarship guides that you might have on the shelves there, because there's no one complete listing of individual opportunities. I would not suggest they use those books that say, free money from the government. I would say those are a scam. unofficially they're a scam. And or at least they're misleading in terms of how easy it is. And that's sort of what there was a person who ran one of these, one of your partner organizations, who published a website called No Free Money, because she got tired of answering that question. Where's this free money that I keep hearing about? My friend got all this free money from the government. Did they though? And it's this is meant to kind of narrow a focus. Any questions about this?
David, I got a question on the subscribed weekly updates. Though we are library centric,
Yeah.
once they enable that option, then does the individual, the patron, put in their contact information?
No, unfortunately, this is specifically for because you're going to get at it through your library. This doesn't really have an impact on them. There's no opportunity for them to do that. However, if they go, and I'll open up a new window here into Candid Learning. If they go to learning.candid.org, which is, no, it really can. Let's see. I can spell learning. What does it mean when you misspell learning? It must mean it's right before Thanksgiving or something.
Day before yeah, that's right. Hunger.
Candid Learning is where we have lots of information. And in addition to that, you can always ask us questions. And there's a little Candid at a glance at the top that will tell you where you can find all the different things that we do. Over here in their Philanthropy News Digest is where you can sign up for all sorts of different information. You can look to see where's the nearest location near you that you can use our resources. If you go to Philanthropy News Digest, you can find out about the latest RFPs. You can sign up for alerts and newsletters.
Awesome.
That's where the individuals would do that, signing up for alerts and newsletters.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
And that would be, if you're looking, you join with your email address, you register, and you can go ahead and get all those different things sent directly to your email. All right, so I've showed you Foundation Directory for nonprofits. I've showed you Foundation Grants to Individuals for individuals. The third thing I'm going to show you is called GuideStar. It's a little bit different because 5 years ago when Candid became Candid, we merged two organizations. One was Foundation Center that gathered all this Foundation Directory and Grants to Individuals info. And the other was GuideStar.org, which is now part of Candid. And it provides information for nonprofit, for funders and others that are looking to research nonprofits. When they would get onto GuideStar on your site, which is something that is freely available for you to offer. I don't know if it's set up on your website or not, but easiest way to check is to go to guidestar.org and do a /IPL, and it will log you in if you're on your site. You can search, you can do two things with this. If you are in here and looking for information about your own nonprofit, and you want to update the information that's there, you can look up your own organization. Let's do, you name a nonprofit in your area, any nonprofit.
Yeah, how about the First Source Foundation? Yeah.
First Source.
That's right.
So First Source Foundation in South Bend. This tells me about them. If it's a 501c3 in the United States, whether it's active or not, it will be listed on this database. This is a private non-operating foundation. It tells you about them as a foundation, but it doesn't tell you a great deal because they haven't taken it upon themselves to update their information. Now, if you really want to find out, since this is a grant-making foundation.
Yeah, it is.
So what you would do to find out lots of information about them is to take this information and go back to Foundation Directory and just look them up by name. But this is for any nonprofit, including private foundations, if you want to find the basic information about them. And this is drawn from their IRS filings. If the IRS filings did not have a lot of detail, like this one has revenue information, but it doesn't have much on operations, has a list of people, it's not been updated. And I can tell it's not been updated because it doesn't have a little transparency seal. What you can do if you were with First Source Foundation, for example, is go here and update your nonprofit profile. And basically what it means is that you're an employee of First Source. You want to make sure that the information you share is a lot more detailed than what people were seeing. So you go on here, claim your profile, which is a process you go through where you share your EIN, share your location, and go back and forth with our database to get permission to update the profile. Once you get that permission, you can go in and learn how to earn seals of transparency. What that means is seals of transparency are just details that you share about your organization, from basic contact information, leadership info. If you can do that in 5 minutes, update that information once you get permission to do so. And suddenly you're sharing more information. You show up a lot better to anybody else who's using GuideStar. And you can then use Apple Pay. It automatically qualifies you for Apple Pay to get donations. If you earn a silver seal, you get a lot of, you share basic information on your programs, share your logos. You get a gold seal and share all that information. If you're a small organization under $1 million in assets, you can get free Foundation Directory Essential for a year if you do this. This is, by the way, totally free for nonprofits to do. And the reason why they would do it is because the people that use GuideStar the most are Facebook fundraisers, pulling information on nonprofits to do a fundraising thing. It's used by Network for Good, Volunteer Match, Salesforce, and all the major US-based donor advised funds, meaning those investment groups that I mentioned earlier, like Fidelity, that handle money but make it very private. So a person takes their money to Fidelity, says, I want to give money to charity. Fidelity uses GuideStar to decide who that money goes to. And the ones that show up better on GuideStar are the ones that have seals of transparency. So one thing I encourage a library to do with any nonprofit that comes in is to claim their profile, get approved, which takes 24 hours or less, and then start telling the story a little bit more detailed. You saw what you could find out about
First Source.
First Source. Let's choose another nonprofit. Let's do what a grant maker might do with this. And you can do it yourself too, because this is the same thing that you would have on site. You want to search in your state for any organizations that have earned a seal of transparency and that are, let's say, an arts and culture organization. I don't know if you saw the number up here go down frequently, but I can unclick these and eliminate this and show you. Out of all the nonprofits that are in Indiana, and that's 69,465, only these have earned seals of transparency, 1,649 of them. And you can see what it is. It shows up next to their name: bronze, gold, whatever. Arts organizations, out of the 1,649, there are 233 that have earned seals of transparency. So if you think of this as a filter that a funder is using to try and decide who to give money to, and say that they want to give to somebody who shared detailed information about themselves, they've earned a seal of transparency, and they're specifically about a particular issue like arts and culture, you can see that instead of competing with the 70,000 nonprofits in Indiana, if you get a seal of transparency, you're competing among 233 other nonprofits for the attention of national funders, for the attention of people on Facebook. And it's interesting to see the Community Foundation has got a gold seal. That's nice. Children's Museum has got a gold seal. If you want to see, if you encourage people to get a platinum seal, there's only 32 of them in the entire state that are arts and culture organizations or have something related to arts and culture, like the zoo. So I've got a big pile of money I got to give away for the of mine. I'm from Fidelity. I do some research and I say, just show me the most information rich organizations out there that are arts and culture related. I'm going to choose from them. You're really in competition with 32 people, 32 organizations. That's why I encourage so many people to update their profile, because it doesn't matter how big they are. Indianapolis Zoological Society is $63 million in revenue. And then you have the Community Music Alliance, which has gross receipts of nothing. You have Friends of TC Steele State Historic Society. These are showing up as vividly and as clearly as the $64 million organization. And this is free, by the way. So when they do this, when you do it for your nonprofit organization, one of the benefits you get is the ability to share a direct link to this. So let's look at the Zoo Society just for an idea of what it could look like for your organization. You have the Platinum Seal, you have contact information. This is the charity check, just to prove that your contributions to you are tax deductible. And then there's lots of detail. Here's the mission, here's details on what they serve and who they serve. Here's where they work. Here's the information on the programs, the Indianapolis Prize, Global Center for Species Survival. Here's awards that they've won, pictures and videos. Here's the results. This is what you would get when you do platinum sharing, is how to measure success. And it tells not only the totals year by year, but it gives context for those totals. So if you have a bad attendance number, like in 2020, attendance lower due to closure of zoo from March to June due to COVID, you can explain results that look out of sync. More information about goals and strategy, financials. And lately, what's been very interesting to funders is operations information, specifically the board of directors, leadership practices, and demographics. Demographics becomes more and more important every day with different funders. So if you can share information about what you've gathered about your organization in this, a lot of this is optional, but it tells somebody who's doing some research about whether it's a good investment to give, it tells them a lot of details about it. So think of it as a grant proposal that you don't have to write. You just share this information once and you get that word out. So this is GuideStar. Again, this is what is called the GuideStar Pro Search, but you're able to do it not from home if you're not a paid subscriber, but if you come into your library, you can use it for free. And you can do the searching, you can update your nonprofit profile, and you can get a lot of support in doing so. All of those things I just showed you, and this goes for all the different places I just showed you, usually have clear, frequently asked questions, including how to do the candid profiles, how to get your nonprofit on GuideStar, how to learn more about Foundation Directory, how to learn more about grants to individuals. All of the questions that you're liable to get, you can use as a library representative or as an individual visiting the library. If you run into problems, you can contact us. There's a little pop-up that comes up when you do that. Also at the bottom of the page, when we are actively monitoring our chat, which is not the case today because we're closed as of 1 o'clock Eastern, you can find direct help immediately. So I'll stop sharing and see if there are any last questions about any of that stuff. Anything?
Real informative, Dave. Boy, you learned something new. Now, for individuals that want to learn on their own, you have a library of tutorials and.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So going back to Candid Learning, learning.candid.org. There's a training section with our live programs, but also our self-paced learning and videos, all the different trainings that we offer, descriptions of them. So if you want to learn proposal writing, for example, and you want to do it self-paced, you can go in here, search the term or choose one. I would say 98% of everything here is free.
Terrific.
Most of our trainings are now free. If you want to learn about specific topics like starting a nonprofit, we have live trainings. We also have on-demand trainings and many resources. The resources section has our blog, our knowledge base of frequently asked questions, sample grant proposals, letters of inquiry, budgets, other documents, a whole bunch of information on nonprofit startup for every state in the country, some ebooks that you can borrow, and then links to more information for funders and for others. And then there's always the Ask Us opportunity to ask our questions, and the Find Us, where you can find out where in the country we are located. So you can type in your zip code and do a search and come up with all the partner libraries within reach. So I just did Cleveland because that's where I am, and you can see there's a lot in the region. And if I keep going out, you'll see how many are in and around your region, for example. And you're going to be one of these.
Yeah.
So I think I went to Elkhart accidentally, but there you go. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can get assistance, and we are happy to help you as many ways as we can.
Terrific.